Hello viewers, welcome back. So today's session is going to be part 5 of our bill-wise detail features of Tally. So in this session, we will be seeing some automation or some advanced settings that you can do for your bill-wise detail. So I will be demonstrating on the receivable part of it. So the same logic is going to be applicable on the payment side also. Okay. So what are the kind of automation that we will be doing, or we can set it up in Tally for the party masters, that is your sundry debtors and your sundry creditors. So let us quickly see what kind of automation we can do it in Tally. We will quickly understand what are the settings that you can do it for the party master. Okay. So I'm going to show this on the receivable part. You can replicate it for the payable also. So first thing is that what is that we can do? We can set a default credit period. So in the earlier session, we saw that while passing the new sales entry or the purchase entry, based on the credit period that you are allowing for your customer, you go and specify the credit period or the credit days, which we saw in our new reference session. Okay. Now, every time you don't have to go and specify the credit limit. Now, normally in business, if you see, you will have customers for whom you might be having different credit period for different customers. So how can you now automate this? So generally what happens in a business, the top management or the owner of the organization decides based on the payment performance of the customer, they will determine the credit period. So instead of every time going and specifying the credit period, because you might have different credit period for different customers, let's assume that the accountant or the data entry operator is going to capture the invoices. Now that person might not know that for this particular customer, what is the credit period that you have determined. So that way, what you can do is you can set it up the default credit period in the party master itself, so that every time when you are raising a new invoice, automatically the credit period will get auto populated in the credit days. Okay. So that is what we will be seeing, and we will see all this in Tally also. Okay. So the default credit period, you can set it up. What other thing that we can do, right? So the second thing that you can do is you can also specify credit limit. So again, depending on each customer, you have certain credit limit that you can extend. See, otherwise normally what happens, you keep giving credit, the customer will keep buying credit on credit, and collection becomes a difficult part normally in this credit commerce or credit transaction. So if you want to restrict billing for your customer beyond a certain amount, right? So that is where you can now again specify the credit limit for each of your customer. So customer A, if you feel that, okay, the credit limit that you would allow this customer is say 2 lakh rupees. So then every time when you are invoicing the customer, you cannot invoice beyond 2 lakh rupees if you are making a new sale. That is one kind of a use case. The second kind of a use case is that, let us assume you have specified for a customer 2 lakh rupees as the credit limit. Now you raise a invoice for the customer. The invoice that you are raising for the customer is say 1 lakh rupee. So it is within the credit period. Sorry, it is within the credit limit. So the tally will allow you to raise that invoice. Now you have this outstanding of 1 lakh rupees. You would have given some credit period for this customer, and let us say the customer wants another consignment. So now you are billing the customer, and when you are billing the customer, uh, the second invoice, let us say the total value of the invoice is 1.5 lakh. Already you have invoiced the customer to the extent of 1 lakh rupees, which is outstanding. Now in this invoice, when you are trying to make an invoice for 1.5 lakh rupee, tally will, one, it will give you a message saying that the value of this invoice, considering the outstanding amount already pending from this customer, is exceeding the credit limit that you have specified for this particular customer. And the best part is, tally will not allow you to raise this invoice, because once you raise this invoice, then the outstanding amount is going to be 2.5 lakh rupee, which is beyond your credit limit. So you can only raise up to the amount outstanding specified as per the credit limit. That means you can raise another invoice to the customer to the extent of 1 lakh rupee. So 1 lakh is outstanding, another 1 lakh, if you are raising an invoice, it is within the credit limit. So it will allow you to complete the invoice. So, and one important aspect that you have to remember is that if you see, normally people who have already been working on tally, so you know that tally, nowhere if there is any exception. So what are the kind of exception that you could get? One is that you might not have cash balance, but you make a payment. The moment you are trying to make a payment, if the cash balance goes into negative, then tally is basically going to give you a warning saying that the cash balance is negative. It is just going to give you a warning, and you can proceed with that. Similarly, when you're trying to invoice, you select a particular stock item, and when you specify the quantity that you are going to invoice, let us assume that the quantity is less than the amount that you are invoicing. For example, let us say you have stock of 5 numbers, and when you are trying to select this particular stock item, and if you are trying to make a sale for 6 numbers, again tally is going to give you a warning saying that the stock is in negative. It is going to give you a warning, and you just press enter and you can move forward, save that particular invoice. So like this, all other exceptions where you come across these kind of use cases just now I mentioned, tally will warn you, but it will not stop you. The only place where tally stops the user from proceeding is the credit limit. So you have to make sure that any invoice that you are doing, it is not exceeding the credit limit. If it exceeds the credit limit, tally is going to stop this invoice. You cannot proceed with this invoice. So what is the solution? The solution is very simple, that now whoever is the decision making authority, as a owner or as a top management, they can now take a call, and then you have to go and then you have to increase the credit limit, and then pass this entry for 1.5 lakh rupee, which will now become 2.5 lakh rupee. So depending on that, you will set up the credit limit. And now, since the second bill that you are doing is within the credit limit that you have modified, it will allow you to save the invoice. So it's a very, very useful feature in tally, where you can have control over the outstanding amount for each of the parties. Okay. Next, what is the next thing that you can do? The next nice feature that tally provides is that when you are invoicing, right, if there are any bill which is outstanding, and if those bills are overdue, then tally is going to give you a warning saying that these two bills are overdue. So basically, while doing the invoice, you would know that there is an outstanding amount of this particular party which is overdue. So we know what is overdue. Overdue is over and above the credit period that you have specified, right? So this way, whenever you are invoicing, and if you want to know for this particular customer, are there any invoices which are overdue? Okay, and if you can enable this option when you're doing this invoice, Tally is going to give you this message saying that how many bills are overdue. It is just going to tell you two bills are overdue, and it is going to give you the amount, right? So that way it helps you to now decide what is going to be your future course of action, whether you want to invoice this, because already there are a couple of bills which are overdue which the customer is not honored his credit timeline. So what is that you want to do you want to further invoice, knowing pretty well that there are bills which are overdue? This is one decision point that you will have. The second decision point could be that, probably now you would want to call up the customer and then speak to the customer and tell him that, see, there are these bills which are already overdue. Now again you are asking me for the material. So what is the decision that you want to take with the customer? Accordingly you can do it. So the best part is that it is going to give you the overdue bill message while doing a fresh invoice. The next option that you can do is, you can override credit limit with the PDC. Now in the last session, that is in part 3, we discussed about a receipt of money against reference, where the customer would have given you a post dated check. Now how is this going to help the user? See, you know that the customer is given you a post-dated check, and normally today, if you see, once you issue a check, you have to make sure that you are honoring that check. If you are not honoring the check, we know what is going to be the consequences. Number one, your credit rating, the CIBIL rating, right? So that is going to impact overall, where basically you will not have, if you don't have the specified required amount of credit rating of your company or as an individual, then it is going to impact where you go for any additional loans or anything at a future date. Every bank or every financial institute is just going to take that your credit rating score, and depending on the credit rating score is what the financial institution is going to decide to extend your credit. Okay, now you have received this post dated check. You have specified the credit limit. So let us take this use case, the same use case. So customer A, you have specified a credit limit of 2 lakh rupees. Okay, and let us say the first invoice that you have raised to the customer is 1.5 lakh rupee. Okay, so you have raised your invoice. The invoice will get accepted because it is within the credit period. Now the customer, on the due date, let us assume that he is now, like informing you that he is arranging some fund, which is the example that I had taken in our part 3. He is arranging for the fund, and then he says that, okay, I will issue you a post dated check. So you are going to account that post-dated check, and we saw how to account the post-dated check also. Now, the moment you account that post-dated check, which means literally you have received money, but not, you cannot encash that amount as on current date, but the amount will get realized once your current date moves into the whatever is the date of the post-dated check that the customer is given you, right? So now, uh, let's say the customer is now asking you for another lot of consignment, another asking for the next sales. Now you, there is already 1.5 lakh rupee outstanding, and you have received a post dated check. This second invoice that you're going to do to the customer is going to be to the extent of say 2 lakh rupees, right? So now 1.5 lakh rupees already outstanding. Now when you raise this invoice based on the credit limit that you are specifying, Tally is going to stop you. It will not allow you to raise this invoice. Okay. But now, by enabling this option, override credit limit with PDC. PDC is post-dated check. So Tally will now consider if you have accounted any receipt from the customer by way of post-dated check. Tally will go and look at the outstanding. It will also see what are the PDC amount that you have received from this customer, and then it will now look into your credit limit. If the new invoice that you are raising, if it is within the credit limit, considering this PDC check as being received. So in this example, he's given you a PDC check of 1.5 lakh rupee, and now you are raising an invoice for 2 lakh rupee. So Tally will go and find out, okay, 1.5 lakh rupee was outstanding. You have received a PDC check of 1.5 lakh rupee, which means literally there is nil outstanding. Now when you are invoicing, Tally will allow you to invoice up to 2 lakh rupees, which is your credit limit. So these are four very important configuration. Some of them, they really don't know the impact and the implication of this. So by understanding this feature, it will give you the businesses, it gives the businesses or the business owners better control over their receivable and payable. So payable, basically it is, if you are going to set up all this for the payable ledger, it is like you are self discipline or self control that you want to bring for your payables, so that you are not defaulting on your payable, so that your credibility in the market is not going to go down, and various other aspects of it. Okay. In the next session, we will now see how are we going to configure each of this option: setting up of default credit period, setting up of credit limit, and then enabling to remind you about the outstanding bill, and also configuring for considering the PDC, the post dated check, while raising a new invoice. Okay. So thank you all. I hope this would have given you the vastness of the feature that Tally allows as far as your receivable payable management is concerned. So thank you all for staying till the end. See you all in the next session, where we will see in Tally how are we going to get this configuration done, and also see the impact in the product. Okay. Thank you very much.